Hey guys, welcome back to the Writer's Lens. I'm JC Alfelto, and it is 2022, and it's the end of January already, and you're probably going, where have my episodes been? Why has this guy not been on a podcast? I have not been able to live life since the holidays. What is going on? Well, today is my episode where I'm going to update you guys on some things going on, as well as the format going forward for the year in 2022, and hopefully some movement on some things that I've been talking about for a year now. And if you've been listening, you're just like, okay, when is that going to happen? I have no idea. So just stick with me here. Welcome back to the Writer's Lens in a new year. It's JC Alfelto, your host, and here we go. All right, guys. Well, welcome back to the Writer's Lens. And as I said before in the intro, I'm JC Alfelto, your host. Theme song is still staying the same this year. I just like that theme. I don't know if I've ever told anybody that otherwise, or other, in other words of where I would have done that. But anyway, Writer's Lens kicking it off here for a fourth year, and really cool how I've come this far with this podcast. I'm pretty shocked myself that I've been able to sustain it this long and be able to do it as long as I have, and to have the listenership that I have, if that's a word, of those that have been checking in on the podcast. And as with the holidays, any year, and as I'm finding as a young father, that it is, well, as young as I think I am. I'm in my late 30s now. As a young father, it's hard. It's hard around the holidays with the hustle and bustle of giftings and just going here, going there, and then finding time when the year begins to basically go, okay, what's going on now for the year ahead of us, and what are we supposed to do with that? So a lot of brainstorming's been going on, so I wanted to give an update on that and what is in store for us for the remainder 11 months of 2022 as far as the podcast goes and as far as I'm concerned, where things are headed for me. So as any of you know, a little bit about myself and as far as this podcast, the genesis of it, and where it all started. I did this podcast because I love storytelling, and I love stories. I love character development, and I love certain, just character archetypes and the analysis of them and how they bleed into our regular lives, how they influence culture, how they influence society, how they can sometimes crack tradition through expression, all these kinds of things. Story is a integral part of being a human being. And for me personally, my own worldview, if you've been following the podcast long enough, you know that I come from a Christian worldview perspective, and I happen to think that's the greatest story, and all stories in one way or another end up bleeding out from it. And so many times when I do an analysis on a story, or I'm talking about a new story that I like, love, hate, whatever, which I will get into in this episode, it tends to come through that lens. And if you don't like it, that's fine. If you think it has some merit to you, then great, stick around. Or if you're just going to try to debunk me because you're listening to me and go, I'm going to wait for this guy to screw up and then I'm going to write him and tell him how terrible he is, hey, that's up to you as well. That's totally on you. If you want to do that, I welcome it, of course, because when you're an expressionist, you are practically inviting criticism as it is anyway. So on to the next thing for this year. Podcast is still going to be rolling, as I said. I'm going to be doing a few snippets of different shorter episodes, and this is not going to be one of those, but it is part of it, of stories I like, stories I love, stories I hate. And I want to do this as succinctly as possible. I made out a list of stories that I tend to like, and it could be anything. It could be something broad, like a particular archetype or character arc. It could be something very specific, like this particular movie, this particular book that I read. I like it, or I love this, or I just absolutely hate it. Or it could be about the entire story. What did I like about this story? What did I love about it? And what did I not care for it whatsoever? And I trust that some of this will resonate with you as listeners, and also relate in some way, because just like me, you're out there consuming a lot of content, or you're being inundated to a lot of different content. And what does that mean? How are we filtering it? What does it look like to us? What is valuable to us when it comes to art and story? These are some things I'm going to continue to percolate with as the year goes on, and continue to unpack. So there's that. The other thing, too, is that my website has been slow moving for this year. It's still the JC Alfelto website. I've been trying to do some syncing between podcasts and blogging, as well as updates on where my second draft of The Shadow of Mars is coming into play, so I'm still working through that. So again, the patience that you guys have with me is stellar, so thank you for that. I also want to release a short story this year. I'd really like to put a short story out there on a Kindle or something like that. It doesn't have to be in print necessarily, but I've got a couple of short stories that I've been wanting to put out there for a while, just short little ones that you could check out over a weekend or something like that. They don't have to be more than 50, 60, 70 pages. Just some little nuggets out there that I want to keep myself in practice and good practice and exercise for when I'm doing the bigger tales, the bigger, the sci-fi, the epics, if you will, that I really, really want to get done, like every other really aspiring young scribe is after. But to not be in love with the epic, though, but at least continue to move forward with those novels that I have on my bucket list, if you will. But other than that, the new format for me is that I'm kind of going to get a little bit away from analysis of particular stories, unless I'm doing, like I said, the stories I like, love, and hate. Because this year, I want to get more practical. I want to talk less in the abstract. I want to talk about the things that I like, love, and hate in a small episode, like I said. But I'm also going to want to talk more practicalities of publishing and what it's like being a creative and just what it's like being an expressionist, especially in the environment that we're in, dealing with things like cancel culture, dealing with things like, publishers who are constantly ignoring you. Are agents going to be a thing of the past? Just try to talk through some of these things as a creative. What does that look like? What does that actually look like for me as a writer going forward? And what does my journey look like up until now at these different checkpoints as we check in with me throughout the year? So some of that's going to feel a little bit more on the fly. Some of that is going to be things that I can reflect on and share with you guys. Hopefully there's some wisdom in there as far as all that is concerned. But to cap off this episode, moving forward, I do want to say just thank you so much for those that have been sticking with me for these 4 years with the Writer's Lens. It's been absolutely awesome just to continue to do the podcast. It's pretty crazy when I think about it that I started this thing as long ago as I did and have just continued to keep it up whenever I can. It's a great outlet for me as a creative, but also it has really fed some people too, from what I understand, from whenever I've talked to people, either in person or just via email, whoever has reached out to me, whether it's been on Instagram. You can still find me on Instagram. I'm not really as active on there as I used to be, but you're not going to find me on Twitter. You're not going to find me on Facebook. So usually you can email me at jclfelto at Gmail. You can email me there. Or you can get at me on Instagram at The Writer's Lens. So you can reach me in one of those two places if you're trying to reach out to me for the podcast. So anyway, all that being said, those are some of the things to look forward to this year. So this is my shorter episode to give you a little bit of a taste of what 2022 has in store. And we'll just kind of keep going at it from there. So again, thanks for checking in here on The Writer's Lens. Next episode coming up is the beginning of that smaller series, succinct episodes of stories I like, love, and hate. And I'm sure that for the critics and all of us, you're going to enjoy some of these as well. So until next time, guys, JCL Felto for The Writer's Lens.